Chapter 148, Orc Dungeon, Throne Tier Summoner vs Throne Tier Boss. The great Orc chieftain tossed orcs in his path aside as he charged for Godfrey. He could feel it, that one was the chieftain of the Pathans. He couldn't remember seeing anyone that small yet radiating such power, but seeing Tempest bow to him, the Orc chieftain was assured that Godfrey was their leader. When he noticed there were too many orcs in his path, the chieftain leaped several dozen feet high, his shadow looming over Godfrey as he swung the great axe glowing with fiery light. Godfrey manifested Mountain's shield and braced himself for impact. The moment the orc's axe struck the shield, its runes glowed and a bloody gash opened up in the orc's chest. Blood spilled as it staggered backward. It did not expect its powerful strike to be reflected right at him. Godfrey tossed the shield at the orc. Growling, the furious chieftain slammed it away, but couldn't find Godfrey anymore, only for a sword to pierce through his chest as Godfrey appeared before him. He had used Ballista's invisibility. Lightning crackled through the sword. However, it only empowered the Orc chieftain, and he swung his axe at Godfrey in a powerful sweep. The attack forced the elite class Vagabond to activate the lightning variant, increasing his speed in that short amount of time, allowing him to leap away. The Orc pulled the longsword out of his chest and tossed it to the ground. His shoulders down to his elbows now had lightning veins. With a stomp, hot black smoke burst out. It carried embers that could melt flesh. Godfrey remanifested the longsword and held it close as he stood in this smoke fog. Just breathing it in could damage his internal organs, so he held his breath. This also meant he had limited time to defeat the Orc chieftain or breathe this substance in. His perception was dangerously hindered, so he could only work by relying on his reflexes. At this moment, lightning burst from his right, forcing him to tilt to dodge. As Godfrey dodged, the Orc chieftain came from the other direction, swinging his axe horizontally. To the Orc's shock, Godfrey manifested the bastion and the axe clashed with it. A massive cut opened up on the Orc chieftain's abdomen. Blood spilled from its mouth as it growled while staggering backward. Sun annihilation. The moment that thought popped into Godfrey's mind, his armor began to glow. His skin slowly changed as fiery veins appeared. It even transformed his army. Everyone saw a massive ball of flames emerge from the black smoke fog that covered 1,000 feet radius. Godfrey swiftly retrieved his knights as the flames erupted, wiping out everything in its radius. Over 2,000 orcs were erased from existence, though at the cost of mana that would take months of meditation to store. In the ruins, Godfrey stood staring at the few body parts that remained of the great Orc chieftain. His golden irises were fixed on the Orc's skull. About half of it remained. He placed his ironclad feet on it and crushed what remained of the skull. A good number of the orcs remained, but they couldn't bring themselves to fight him, not after he crushed their leader's head and wiped out 2,000 with one skill. "It's him, isn't it?" Rowan, who had been brought to a state where he could at least perceive everything without pain, said while watching Godfrey lift his longsword. Those orcs might be hesitating, but they would definitely fight, and their numbers were still great. Godfrey would have to last until the dungeon crumbles, but for that, he needed to get the dungeon core. "It's him," Dominic said grimly. His hand was close to his rifle, but his fingers trembled. Watching Godfrey ascend the scorched throne platform while his knights came out once more to hold the Orc army back, Dominic felt torn. That boy costs 300 million, an amount that could change the life of anyone. Even a criminal would be exalted in the society if he brought Godfrey alive or dead with the picture painted about him. The families of the police officers killed in that incident had been shown live, crying and demanding justice. "He saved us," the interpreter suddenly said, as if she could guess what was in the minds of many. Dominic looked at his agents. Some of them already had conflicting expressions. Some would shoot the moment he ordered, but the others looked like they would defy his orders. "The dungeon will soon collapse. It must have released a massive amount of mana. Whether he likes it or not, he'll be surrounded the moment the walls of this dungeon dematerialize," Dominic said. As the dungeon dematerialized, Dominic and the others appeared in the forest. "Get lost, vagabond." He scoffed when he saw Godfrey afar, looking at them. With a soft nod, Godfrey turned and left. The agent captain was acting tough, but he turned out to be a good man, despite not looking like it. "Next time we meet, I might shoot, but today, you're my savior," Dominic said inwardly as they heard the sound of vehicles. Lots of vehicles with armed agents, policemen, and the media drove to meet them. Rowan was quickly rushed to an ambulance as several media teams gathered around Isadora. This is the biggest dungeon Amazon has ever recorded, and from the looks of it, your team faced quite a loss and the city's sole tri-summoner is badly injured. How did you clear this dungeon? Isadora gave them an exhausted smile. Let's say we were saved by a knight in shining armor. What? Guild President Isadora, what do you mean? We would like to know. Despite their clamoring, Isadora left them. Her heart was filled with what she had witnessed in the dungeon. She had found herself in a helpless situation for the first time in decades and was saved by someone she totally did not expect to see. Someone her guild master had agreed, along with the others, to catch, alive or dead. The personal assistant of the mayor of Amazon walked into the mayor's office. Have you heard, sir? I watched it live, a knight in shining armor. I did not expect to hear such from Miss Isadora herself. The mayor replied from behind his desk. Someone else was in the dungeon. Apparently, without this person, our raiding team would have failed and Amazon would be in a state of crisis. The mayor frowned slightly. Did this stranger leave any clue about who he might be? Just the knight in shining armor. This has to be some kind of riddle. The person might not be wearing armor, the personal assistant said firmly. While Isadora's statement became a hot topic, the vagabond they spoke about stood before a huge door that had turned into wood, as lament absorbed the dungeon core, rising from 10.9 to 11.5. That massive increase unsealed the fifth door. It was time for the commander and her prince to meet. End of volume III. On the eve of the day, 2 days after the Amazon Green Gate dungeon was cleared, a handsome, blue-haired young man with a white face mask changed the sign of the cafe shop from open to closed while looking outside the glass door. He could see a few cars moving on the road under the warm white light of the street lamps. Pedestrians were scarce, as it was already past 10 p.m. Percival sighed as he picked up a rag from one of the tables and went to the counter, where he began to wipe it. Just then the bell rang as someone walked in. Percival sighed inwardly, realizing he had forgotten to lock the door, so he calmly spoke. "We're closed." His white apron and round glasses made him look scholarly. "Oh, I know." That sort of reply made Percival lift his head. His eyes narrowed at the sight of a mid-20s man, seated with both legs crossed on the table he had just cleaned. Percival swiftly recognized the man as a well-known celebrity of the famous XYZ trio. He was full name Xerxes, known for his 200 cm height and lean athletic build that kept him as one of the big city's leading models. He was the man with a Greek god build, a literal one. However, one strange thing about this star that made him even more beloved was doves. It seemed like his summon had something to do with manifesting doves, because Xerxes became known for it. Even right now, while seated arrogantly, he gently caressed a dove nestled within his palm. Because of this, anywhere people saw white doves, they expected Xerxes to be nearby. "What do you want? You can't get our services until the next morning." Xerxes smiled. "I had to come. We had a party, and your sister told us something I guessed should have been a secret, so I came to see the legendary humanoid summoner himself that's hiding from the big city." Xerxes brought out a phone and placed it on the table. Percival could hear his sister's intoxicated voice over the phone as she told whoever questioned her some deep secrets. It was like these people already had their suspicions. But his sister never drank. Percival's expression shifted slightly as he slowly stopped wiping the counter. "Where's she?" Xerxes chuckled. "Why would we hurt her? We just had some information about you and had to confirm it. We also met someone, a healer that once worked in Manhattan. She was a fan, so it wasn't tough to get information out of her. Humanoid summoners have to look out for each other. I brought a gift, a token of friendship." Xerxes snapped his fingers, and a huge item covered in aluminium foil appeared on the table. Percival squinted. "It's dove meat." Xerxes' statement made Percival's eyes widen to the limit. Xerxes lifted his hand, forcing the dove to fly. "The meat of your sister's summon isn't really good. Don't think we did the same to her. Like I said, we humanoid." "What did you do to Miss Julia?" Percival bellowed. Xerxes brought his legs down, staring straight into Percival's eyes. "Calm yourself. When the human soul chose to become a beast, didn't they ever realize that it would one day put them at the lower part of the food chain?" Xerxes cocked his head as he continued. "Besides, I know you left Manhattan, came to this island, and chose to work in this small cafe because you don't like conflict. You're the type that hides that strength and ends up rotting away. But there's no way a summoner of your tier can just do whatever he likes. outside the authorities' palm of control. That's why you're being monitored. Xerxes looked toward the door. You should have known about this already. Do you see how your life is being forced into control? All this because people like you were too lazy to rule yourselves, so you decided a few should have the power and now you're bound. You gave them power and yet you're being controlled for it. Percival looked at the meat, not giving any ear to whatever Xerxes had just said. Is that Miss Julia's summon? Even if Xerxes was right, even if leaders abused their power, it did not justify eating another's summon. Upon hearing that, Xerxes frowned. So what if it was? Are you going to fight me over it? Xerxes' voice grew deeper. She's already dead. It will be meaningless to fight over a dead woman. He rose to his feet. I'm offering you a chance to get stronger. Your summon has potential, and the only way it can grow fast is what I've just offered you, the light of the great god, a chance to be welcomed gloriously into the sanctuary. You're ready to throw all that away to keep hiding here. How foolish. Xerxes froze. His pupils narrowed greatly as he felt something walk out of a blue portal behind him. It clearly moved on 2 feet. The humanoid summon. The moment the Sea King appeared behind Xerxes, now 12 feet tall, the entire island quaked as the sea became restless. Xerxes felt incredibly small before the aura radiating from the blue-scaled, majestic humanoid behind him. This being could sink the entire island. Knowing that this 19-year-old young man had such a powerful summon alarmed Xerxes, and he also had the Leviathan, the most dangerous aquatic predator, beast lord of the sea. W. A golden trident pierced through his back and out his chest, lifting him up. Xerxes spat blood as his eyes lost their light. However, his body crumbled into dust. In one of the highest floors in the Pagoda Guild headquarters in the heart of Manhattan, Xerxes woke up, breathing heavily. He was on a sofa, and 2 men, Yiming, known as Y, and Zane, known as Z, were seated on other chairs. Yiming's summon had the ability to freeze a point in time, but that left a physical copy in whatever posture they were before the freeze. What happened? Zane asked solemnly. The only explainable reason for this state, which was frozen some days ago, to unfreeze was that Xerxes had been killed. He rejected my gift, and whatever his summon is, it's insanely powerful. Even the island was affected by its presence. Yiming looked out the window. Good thing we decided to send the recording to the police. They currently have his sister. I had a feeling you'd end up dead, that Percival has no place in sanctuary. Xerxes touched his chest, his eyes gleaming. He's about to have a feel of what it truly means to be a humanoid summoner close to the infamous Godfrey. I guess someone will be popular soon. While this went on, a female agent knocked on the cafe's glass door. Percival sighed. Priscilla, you should have left that guild. He knew before an agent came here, they must have checked his house. The moment he retrieved the Sea King, the agent opened the door and walked in. Percival, it's best you come with us quietly. We know you have a throne-tier Leviathan. It grew really quickly after the Great Vanishing. You would have been made a great naval officer. Her smooth voice rang as he saw her long silver-white hair that almost went beyond her waist. Odette Ouroboros. You speak like I'm a criminal. All I have is a humanoid summon that my soul created, just like your beast, Percival said. The lady before him had graduated 2 years ahead of him from London Summoners High. Humanoid summons are not solely created by your soul like beast summons. That's why we can eat other summons, or would our summons accept it? They're made of our souls. Despite looking like beasts, they aren't truly beasts, but your humanoid summons. Odette stepped closer. Are made from the dying souls of humanoid races, merging with yours to survive. Those with just humanoid summons aren't truly summoners. Their evolution was never completed. Let me be here and work in peace. I won't cause any trouble for the authorities, Percival stated calmly. No, we can't bend laws for a few. It will be unfair to others, Odette said firmly. Give me your hands, she added as she brought out suppressor cuffs. Percival's eyes gleamed. If I refuse to go to the readjustment program for years, what makes you think I'll do it now? I've seen what your readjustment did to my father. It broke our home, making him distant from us. You won't do the same to me. Odette blasted forward with a step. The wooden floorboards shattered, tearing down a portion of the wall. Thick, jagged blue scales manifested all over Percival, with a powerful horn protruding from his forehead. He spun backward, launching a kick right at Odette's face. Her eyes narrowed, and though she tried to block it, the kick launched her out of the building, through another, and right into the wall of a third. The clouds rumbled. and it suddenly began to drizzle as Percival walked out of the now half-destroyed cafe. "I guess I've lost my job," he thought as he saw armed agents on both sides of the road, their rifles pointed at him. They unleashed fire the moment he appeared, but Percival simply looked at them, wasting king-tier bullets as they bounced off his thick scales. With a thought, a 600-foot-long leviathan burst out of the sea, roaring so loud everyone on the island could hear it. The clouds rumbled, lightning crackling within them. The sea rose and slammed hard against the shores, a great wall of water flooding the streets as though alive. Just then, a 300-foot-long, silver-eyed snake appeared with Odette Ouroboros on its head. Its hiss was like a low roar as the snake bared its fangs at the leviathan. Odette's hair whipped about as the wind intensified. "Percival, we have orders to kill you if you don't stand down." Percival's leviathan launched itself into the island, moving through the air at great speed. Its mighty fangs couldn't even be covered by its hard lips. Despite the leviathan's size, Odette's white serpent didn't back down. It spewed forth pink mist at the moment the leviathan closed. The leviathan charged past the mist, and both beasts collided, causing buildings to crumble. Odette's serpent was swiftly entwined by the leviathan, much bigger and twice its length. Noticing the danger, the serpent sank its fangs through the leviathan's thick armor. Percival frowned. Despite the steel-like gleam and length of those fangs, Percival doubted they could pierce his leviathan's scales. Those scales were even harder than a dragon's. It could mean Odette's serpent had an adaptive skill that allowed it to bypass armor, an efficient evolution that made its crucial weapon applicable in the toughest situations. The leviathan unleashed a mighty roar and lowered its head, crushing the snake's head with its massive rows of fangs. It also tightened its body, crushing the snake's torso. Odette spat blood as disbelief flashed through her eyes. Her serpent's venom killed instantly. Why wasn't the leviathan dead after injecting all that venom? "Levi," Percival yelled with alarm. Through resonance, he could feel the venom destroying his summon from within. The leviathan's tenacity was powerful, but it could only delay the inevitable from being bitten by a summon from a family known for the deadliest venom. All their targets always met death. Percival's eyes widened as he watched his leviathan bite itself, tearing off huge chunks of flesh. It kept biting away the corrupted parts, but at this rate it would die from the injuries instead. "Kill it." Now that the leviathan's inside was exposed, the agents found an advantage. Several black rocks, giant birds with flames billowing from their feathers, flew toward the enormous creature, badly damaging it. Seeing the guns focused on his Levi, Percival lost it, especially after trying to retrieve the leviathan but finding himself blocked, most likely by the poison. His eyes throbbed and a portal appeared. As the portal opened, a tank launched an armor-piercing round. It made contact, resulting in a huge explosion that tossed Percival into a building and caused its collapse. "Get away from Levi." A pair of blue eyes pierced through the smoke fog, and with a sweep of the trident, everyone bore witness to the 12-foot majestic Sea King. Percival fused with the Sea King, lifted the trident, and slammed it into the ground. In that moment there was a great quake as jets of water tore through the earth, blasting the flaming rocks. The jets were so powerful their bones were completely shattered. But that wasn't all. Water rose up around the island, climbing higher and higher until a wall of water over 300 feet tall towered above it. "He's gone mad," an agent exclaimed as the water fell inwards, crushing a building and a great portion of the land. Water jets kept tearing through the earth, rising dozens of feet into the sky. Cracks spread out as the island seemed to fragment. Great amounts of water, taller than 3-story buildings, rushed inwards with ferocious sea beasts, crumbling structures. The Sea King's eyes glowed brighter as a mighty black thunder rock appeared. Clouds swirled together, unleashing a piercing lightning spear straight at it. Lifting the trident, the Sea King spun it, generating a spiraling mass of water. When the lightning finally came, the Sea King caught it with the trident's tip. Lightning crackled through its golden and blue-scaled body as it spun. When it faced up once more, the gathered water burst upward in forms of droplets. The Sea King vanished, reappearing from a cluster of water droplets right below the thunder rock, thrusting its trident through the head of the throne-tier summon. As it landed, a great surge of water burst upward. The agents were already struggling to survive the flood, and the island was falling apart. It had cost a lot of mana, but Percival rarely fought. He had enough to support this outburst. Just as the Sea King prepared to reach the Leviathan, the dead thunder rock rose again in what looked like a second form. Its blue lightning crackled even more intensely, almost as if it were made of pure lightning. The lightning crackled through the water, electrocuting the Sea King. He could see visible currents gather around his body. Before the thunder rock's eyes, the Sea King dissolved into water, and in its place, a giant made of water emerged, swinging its hand upward. The water rose high, trapping the thunder rock and dragging it under. The giant rock flailed, sending massive amounts of water flying, but it was already drowning. In the next moment, the summon vanished, revealing the summoner, an agent who tried to leap out of the water only to be submerged. The entire sea itself had turned against him. Fighting the Sea King on an island, surrounded by the ocean, was guaranteed death. Percival took his dying beast summon in its massive water form and moved. As he moved, the great flood that had almost swallowed the island moved with him until he vanished into the sea, leaving the once mini-island city devastated and in utter ruins. A few hours later, dozens of helicopters scoured the sea with hundreds of aquatic summons moving alongside two massive submarines. "We've located him. He's kilometers away," a report came to a man with well-combed blue hair and a robust stature. He sighed. "It's best I end the calamity I brought to this world." "Surround him," Gideon Jackson, father of Percival Jackson, said in a calm, collected voice. Several dozen kilometers away, Percival caressed the Leviathan as it growled weakly. His inability to move this 700-foot-long beast was the reason he was stuck. The poison just couldn't be stopped. The Ouroboros were indeed the deadliest to face. "King," Percival said, and the Sea King, standing with his trident guarding a water-free barrier around them, looked at him. At a different place, Godfrey picked up the mask of a purple-skinned, elven-like humanoid in the middle of a battlefield of weathered stones and ruined structures. He was in some sort of fallen castle. Hundreds of purple-skinned demon orcs lay to waste, black smoke billowing from their bodies. Walls and pillars crumbled at the mere scream of the crimson-armored knight behind Godfrey. Dirge and Godfrey turned to the 9-foot-tall crimson-armored knight. Her armor wasn't as bulky as the men's, but it looked quite heavy. The design was sleek with subtle curves that made it clear this was a female. A long white plume that reached the narrow part of her armored waist moved ever so softly. Her helmet had a V-end just above her lips, and there was fur shoulder padding before her cloak. One of her pauldrons was bigger than the other, and it bore the proud insignia of the sun. Elegant and majestic were the two words that defined Dirge. "Grand Prince, should I raise them?" Dirge asked as Godfrey examined the mask, which had exquisite sculpting and two sharp eye holes. "That's why we've been searching for dungeons. Go ahead." The moment he uttered that, black smoke billowed out of Dirge as she lifted her obsidian staff, the length of a longsword. Over 200 demon orcs with lord and king tiers among their ranks rose up as black shadowy figures. Seeing this, Godfrey wore the golden mask. It made his ocean blue eyes shine brighter. Godfrey remembered the information on the tablet as he looked at these massive orcs whose fingers extended into claws as long as short swords. They all became mist and were absorbed by Dirge, increasing her count to 300. Summon, Knight Commander of the Golden Order. Type, Hybrid. Tier, 12. Potential, 14. Description, Knight Commander of the Elite Mages. Though physically powerful and able as her male counterparts, the False Heart had a mutation in females leading to the First Psychic, someone capable of manipulating objects with her mind. In Blackout, this commander grows tremendously powerful, harnessing the abilities of a chimeric banshee, which are screams of mass destruction, flight, life drain, and the terrifying capability to reanimate the souls of her kill to fight for her. Also able to store a great number of them. "Time to leave this dungeon," Godfrey said as the dungeon crumbled. Covering his head with his hoodie, he walked into the street only to see the news being displayed on the screen of a skyscraper. He could see his face there, and right next to it was Percival. There was even a live record of the sea as the fleet closed in on Percival. Godfrey's expression changed. He had thought staying away from them would keep them safe, but that was just a thought. He was currently in Manhattan. The sea wasn't too far away. With his large hood covering his head, the golden mask wasn't too visible, especially now when it was late. He was thronged by a thick crowd, most of them watching the display. Even if anyone could see his face, they wouldn't know how cold it looked due to the golden mask. His sclera turned black as he watched a phoenix on the TV flying above the sea. A large amount of vapor rose from the water as a vast portion evaporated, even though the phoenix was kilometers above it. Godfrey leaped several dozen feet into the air, sprouting long tendril wings before shooting into the sky, long before people could react. All they felt was the shockwave that blew through several hundred feet, through cars, people, and shops. He was coming with his rage, a king to the aid of his ace. As the great army of agents closed in on Percival's location, creatures made of water suddenly attacked them. Some were sucked into whirlpools, disoriented, and sent into the depths. Many of them swiftly fought back the water creatures with their summons. Those that had great white shark summons and orcas led the charge. King rose to the surface of the water, deflecting bullets from helicopters by spinning his trident. All of a sudden, a 13.9 throne-tier megalodon, over 100 feet long with rows of fangs spanning 12 feet wide, swam toward King along with a dozen king-queen tier beasts. King swiftly looked up, seeing a projection of the megalodon appear above it. The Sea King swung its trident, summoning a large body of water before moving backward as the projection crashed into the sea, causing a splash that rose several feet high. King swung his trident, cutting a large gash through a great white before vanishing and reappearing before a hammerhead, plunging his trident downward. But before it struck, the megalodon came from below, bursting upward. King found himself sinking into its great jaws, so he changed form, from a 12-foot-tall humanoid into a near 30-foot-tall water giant, without feet, and slapped the megalodon away before lifting his hand as the sea rose up, forcing all the summons back. Bullets still rained down from above, but they passed through his water form, dealing no damage. King remanifested, slamming his trident on the surface of the sea. Water blasted upward, rising high as it flowed away, leaving a crossroad of dry land. A high wall of water stood on all four roads, trapping lots of aquatic summons, which fell on the seabed. Their summoners swiftly retrieved them. Even the megalodon had no choice but to be retrieved, or die. Just then, a great amount of flames fell from above. King slammed his trident once more and the water gathered together, but the phoenix flames turned the water into vapor, melting the seabed before water from other parts gathered back. The heat was unprecedented. The phoenix, completely blazing, remained kilometers above, as if afraid of drying up the sea. Its fears were valid. Vapor rose rapidly, and this part of the sea was already growing hot despite the distance. King reformed a great distance away, as the phoenix unleashed a piercing cry, its long flaming plumage dancing in the air as it sent burning feathers. Each feather carried explosive power. They caused great orbs of pure flames, resulting in explosions spanning thousands of feet. Other summoners had to retrieve their summons or die under the bombardment. King fought back by manifesting a hurricane made of water. Seeing it, the phoenix's eyes gleamed, and it launched fire into the hurricane, turning the water hurricane into a fire hurricane that went deep into the sea, forcing it to boil and evaporate. "We'll lose the sea at this rate," said a woman watching the scene. "Killing an Ouroboros sealed that summoner's fate. There's no way the authorities will spare him, not after he's offended the second most prominent family in the region," a man replied. "These humanoid summoners are quite audacious lately." The woman looked at him from the corner of her eyes. "You've been cooped up in this city. They've always been audacious, attempting to level several cities, each attempt leading to the death of hundreds or thousands." "Well, at least Manhattan is safe," the man replied, watching as the phoenix gathered flames in its beak. It wasn't the normal kind. This one kept gathering until it formed an orb glowing with yellow and crimson light. The orb descended like a meteor, trailed by a deadly gleam that changed the clouds and atmosphere. King swung his trident, gathering a great amount of water, large as a skyscraper, and when both clashed, a bright red gleam spread outward, followed by a blast that ran across thousands of feet in a heartbeat. King fell into the sea. Even in the depths of boiling water, his skin slowly cracked, forming embers that broke away and disintegrated. "Mom," Percival whispered, bleeding from his mouth as he felt his bond to King weakening. He could barely feel anything with Levi anymore, but at this point, he was far past pain. The phoenix soared upward, vanishing into a bright portal as its summoner retrieved it. It was definitely the summon of a powerful summoner, as he wasn't even physically present. Percival felt his powers weaken as his bond with his summons became faint. Seeing the water dome begin to collapse, Levi made him grab its horn and swam toward the surface despite the large amount of toxic blood oozing from its wounds. Upon reaching the surface, Percival saw two massive submarines on his left and right, with hundreds of aquatic summons keeping their distance from Levi, but the megalodon slowly inched closer. Percival squinted as his father came out of a submarine, aiming a pistol at him. "I didn't raise you to be a mass murderer." Percival remembered the man he once knew as a kid, the man who only kept changing as time went on, and sighed weakly. "You didn't raise me at all." Gideon unleashed a shot, but Levi blocked it, roaring in return. As he loaded the second bullet, a great rumbling echoed across the sea, forcing everyone to look toward its source. A golden light tore through the dark crimson clouds at great speed, and the aura emanating from whatever was coming was suffocating. "What's that?" people watching murmured to each other, but then their eyes widened. A hooded man with 6 long tendril wings descended. At the sight of Percival's Leviathan, Godfrey dropped onto a submarine first. His raw aura, empowered by rage, froze even King-Queen tier summons. "Say your last prayers," he whispered, and by simply clenching his fist, he used echo on Dirge's telekinesis, allowing him to crush half the massive submarine in an instant. "Dirge, come forth," Godfrey said inwardly as the megalodon began to swim toward him along with other summons. A portal appeared and Dirge walked out, her armor already crimson as she was in blackout state. After absorbing the dungeon core from Godfrey's recent raid, she had risen to 12.2, so in blackout state her strength soared to 13.2. Her plume, which remained white, billowed as she kept herself afloat on the water's surface with telekinesis. "You're Godfrey right, falling right into my lap wasn't how I expected to get you," Gideon stated calmly, though inwardly, he was trying to remember details about the night Godfrey had summoned, only to realize they had never seen this type before. Was this another summon? Dirge simply stretched forth her wand and black mist burst out, hitting the megalodon first before the others, draining their lives. The other aquatic summons perished instantly while the megalodon struggled, but met the same fate. Others were horrified by this, but Gideon quickly summoned a pure white-skinned humanoid with wild blue hair. It was a 12.9 king tier with 3 eyes, the third being completely gold. But this summon was capable of killing throne tiers, even those 1.5 tiers above it, making it one of the region's most prized humanoid summons under the authorities' control. A powerful pressurized beam burst from its third eye. It had greater power than a sniper rifle with a throne tier bullet, but Dirge waved it aside with telekinesis and was about to open her mouth when her eyes went to Percival. If she screamed, he might die along with the others. Taking that into account, Dirge pulled out massive metal sheets from the submarine, molding them into drill-like lances, which she sent forth with a casual flick of her wand. Gideon's summon tore through the first 2, but the others pierced holes through its body, forcing the summon to its knees. Gideon staggered backward, bleeding from his mouth as his gun clattered from his hand. However, his eyeballs almost left their sockets when his summon's skin turned black, its 2 eyes changed, and it rose back to its feet, emitting black smoke. What's this? Gideon was frozen. He had never heard of such a skill in his entire life, but his summon rose, without any bond to him this time. "Obey me," Gideon hissed, but the 3-eyed summon charged its third eye, shooting a beam that cut right through Gideon's right arm, splitting the submarine into 2 and bringing doom to those trying to hide within. Gideon fell into the sky with disbelief written all over his face as he plunged deeper. Had they not already won? There was no information on that female summon. The authorities needed to know. They needed to kill that golden-haired boy before he brought down everything. And for the blue-haired one, his only regret was not killing him when he found out he awakened a humanoid. "I never thought I'd see you again. It might be a different night, but I know one person with something similar," Percival said weakly. "It's been a while, but we need to get your summon treated," Godfrey said as Levi growled faintly, already close to death's gate. "Do you know how much he weighs? You won't be able to carry him. Not when we're in the middle of the sea," Percival sighed. "Would you quit sighing? You're not dying and neither is your summon," Godfrey said, retrieving Dirge, who added the 3-eyed humanoid to her arsenal. Godfrey purposely refused to speak about Gideon, but his dilemma was that the path to paradise was quite far. It wasn't like he had ever met the mysterious Gabriel and could communicate with him. Also, telepathy had limits. It only covered a few miles at most, and Arian wasn't in this vicinity. This meant there was no way to get the Leviathan to his mother. "Is that her?" Percival's question made Godfrey look behind him. His eyes slowly widened at the sight of a white dragon. It looked small in the distance, but his enhanced vision allowed him to see the young woman riding this dragon. It was truly her. Percival glanced at him and chuckled softly. In a few seconds, Grace froze the water surface with her breath and landed, lowering herself for Isolde to descend. The dragon's eyes narrowed as it stared at the man with the golden mask and grey hoodie. Though he had a slightly bigger build, his aura seemed familiar. Godfrey's eyes locked with Isolde, whose looks had only gotten better throughout this 1 year and few months. He wanted to speak, but no words came out as he watched her teleport Percival and his summon away. Both of them stood, over 100 feet between them. Are you a vagabond? Godfrey sighed quietly. I am. Then you must know who I am. Your lack of cautiousness and your aid to Percival show that you must know about us. Will you come to where I've taken him, or leave? She doesn't recognize me, he thought. Well, I did change my haircut, and I'm wearing a mask inside this large hood. She must have taken him to Pendragon Island. Does your silence correspond to a no? Isolde tilted her head slightly. I'll go with her. I haven't seen this Pendragon Island before, and besides, I need to bring Percival to paradise. It's better for people like us there. Godfrey nodded. He still didn't understand why he hadn't removed the mask, and hugged Isolde despite desperately wanting to. Well then, a violet orb swallowed both of them after she retrieved Grace, and Godfrey found himself in a large field. Percival's summon was being attended to by over a dozen summoners, with summons possessing high healing factors. Godfrey just realized how huge this Leviathan was. Beside it, the Sea King sat in a meditative pose with the trident on its thighs. Godfrey saw dragons with vast wings dominate the skies. It seemed like a normal day to these people, but not to him. 2 large shadows already flew over his head, and he'd only been here for less than a minute. Percival sat on the field. He raised an eyebrow when he saw Godfrey and Isolde, but Godfrey still had the mask. You know that's Godfrey, right? He asked her, forcing Godfrey's eyes to widen. I know. Isolde's reply shocked him the most. She knew. I've spoken to my parents. These people here are our trusted medical teams. Not a word of your presence here would be leaked, and our mansion is a few kilometers away from the city, so you can remove your mask, Isolde said softly. It had been so long since he heard her voice. He had imagined what it would sound like to hear it again, but none of those imaginations had ever carried this feeling. With this thought, Godfrey slowly removed the golden mask and saw Isolde smile, yet what she said made his heart leap. My parents are waiting. Isolde spoke nonchalantly, as if she wasn't referring to the current heads of the strongest family in this region. A family that had ownership of several dungeons, earning from large conglomerates and guilds that bought beast parts to make armor, weapons, and new dungeon beast tech such as bullets, vehicles, aircrafts, and even buildings. Dungeons had a lot to offer, and even using the rocks, they provided a more solid structure that could withstand more pressure than concrete made on Earth. Freelancers usually paid taxes while living in dungeon cities, and a good portion ended up in the banks of the Pendragon family. Their wealth couldn't be measured. Arthur Pendragon himself was known as one of the top 4 strongest summoners in this region, and he was also one of the world's pillars. It was people like him that defended Earth from catastrophic Red Gate dungeons, keeping the current peace Earth enjoyed. Due to this, Arthur wasn't a stranger to war and frequent battles. It was obvious he was nurturing his daughter as the next head. Isolde was basically a queen in the making. Godfrey finally came face to face with these figures whose names were on the lips of billions, yet very few had met them in person. Standing at the entrance of the sitting room, he saw Arthur seated on the sofa, watching the news, which was currently showcasing clips of Percival's battle. His wife, Christine, sat at the dining table with one leg crossed over the other as she scrolled through her phone, the backdrop of the starry night sky fully visible through the glass wall. It's him, Arthur gasped inwardly the moment he laid eyes on Godfrey standing beside his daughter. I can sense a dense aura from him. I'm sure it's not too far off 15 or 15.3, close to the very peak of throne tier all on his own. I don't think this kid knows about his tremendous strength, or he would have looked a bit more confident. He's here. Isolde's voice drew Christine's attention to them. She raised an eyebrow upon noticing Godfrey's stiffness. Her lips curled up a little. Quite different from what I expected, she said inwardly, comparing his current agitated look to the one he had in some of her daughter's paintings. The young man there felt like a king. Even though it was just a painting, she could feel his dominating aura. Right now, Godfrey felt like a prince still on his journey, still shaken in a way the king would see as normal. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Pendragon, Godfrey said, almost collapsing from pressure as Isolde waved at him and left. Seeing Godfrey's pleading gaze, Isolde giggled but left nonetheless, leaving him before a summoner whose summon could conjure black holes, and another whose dragon had 14 heads, each head being able to kill a throne tier. These two would destroy a continent, turning this entire region into a wasteland if a fight should break out. Likewise, Arthur replied. Won't you sit? Christine chipped in, and Godfrey sat down, exhaling under his breath while looking around. Everywhere felt silent all of a sudden. Inwardly, he was thinking of what to say, How exactly was he supposed to start a conversation? They didn't look disturbed that he was a vagabond or a humanoid summoner. The moment Godfrey thought about this, he couldn't help but be curious. You don't mind that your daughter is still close to me, a humanoid summoner and a vagabond, he found himself asking. Christine looked genuinely surprised. Why would we? We can worry about the one outside, but not you. Be at ease, Arthur said. Godfrey was confused. Why? He asked, unable to understand what was going on here. Percival still fit the bill. What made him any different? He was just as dangerous. Arthur shook his head, and Godfrey frowned. Why did they look like they knew something he should already know? You're not a humanoid summoner. It feels like I'm seeing a tiger that thinks he's a lion. What? The moment Arthur said that, Godfrey suddenly remembered what he saw in his soul space on the first day of his awakening. The very moment his soul space opened to him, what he saw was the castle. Because he only bonded and unleashed the knights, Godfrey had somehow forgotten he wasn't actually a humanoid summoner, simply accepting what the outside world saw him as. We might not show it that much, but we're quite thrilled to meet the first summoner who didn't summon a humanoid beast or plant, but something that's supposed to be non-living. It's odd that a soul took the shape of a castle. Those knights of yours have a networking of your soul threads. Half of you is actually the castle, indirectly making those knights kind of like your children or subjects. I don't know what word to use. Half of me is the castle. It's no wonder I'm not affected when my knights are killed. I just run out of a lot of mana. Godfrey could barely believe it. The truth was right before his eyes the whole time, but it just didn't click. Those he told still couldn't wrap their heads around it. Since all the castle did so far was open chamber after chamber of knights, he had kind of forgotten his actual tier was origin tier. Not potential, but true tier. He was the only origin tier in existence on Earth at the moment. It wasn't potential. His potential didn't even have a measurement. Right now, he was an origin tier summoner. The sole origin tier. But then there was no gain. He didn't even benefit from symbiosis. It was like the castle wasn't even part of his soul. However, his eyes suddenly widened as Godfrey realized the pattern. No wonder his title kept increasing. I'm a grand prince right now, he mused. He would eventually be able to access his castle fully, maybe when he reached king, if that was the end. At that point, symbiosis alone would launch him beyond reason. As his original summon, his symbiosis gain might be up to 50%. And along with the castle's abilities, he would become so strong that his current self couldn't even imagine it. Wait, Godfrey faced the couple. How did you know about all this? How did these people know more about him than he did? Was it because of Isolde? How much did she know? Arthur rose to his feet. Come with me, he said, and Godfrey followed him out the back, into a vast lawn field which ended before a massive lake. There were electric pole lamps planted by the sides of a paved walkway, their warm white light illuminating the surroundings. One of Isolde's summons can see the future. We've spent years decoding it, Arthur said as they strolled on the lawn. I have a duty toward humanity, which is one of the reasons I don't know what exactly to think of you. A savior, a destroyer, I have no idea what you'll turn into. If you aren't clear already, dungeons are other worlds invading ours with the intention of conquering the inhabitants of this world. I believe that castle of yours was built by a civilization, the Pathani. Men of gold. Arthur looked at Godfrey, they're the reason Cain fell. What? Godfrey tilted his head. Weren't the authorities behind his defeat? Apart from Adam, Cain was the second summoner who outranked others so much that he slaughtered over 200 king-queen tiers, who were the world's strongest back then. He was undefeatable like Adam, and his core ability was that he could create armies of summoners. Dual, tri, quad and more were amongst their ranks, all devoted without a doubt to him. The then leaders planned to bend the knee. After all, he already ruled 3 of the 7 major cities. Arthur sighed. It was surrender and become an inferior in his world, or he slaughtered and had your summon used for a feast. Cain was an ambitious man, yet his god complex drove him to invade another world, thinking Earth was already his. Guess who he met? Godfrey squinted. My knights. Arthur nodded, looking at the lake, which was quite serene under the moonlight. Yes, according to the fanatic who revealed it. That world was called Pathani, and the Pathans already had an order that faced dungeons, the Golden Knights. They were the ones to face Cain and his massive army, leaving behind a huge scar of defeat as he fled back here. Arthur's eyes gleamed. The authorities saw an advantage and assassinated the weakened god, or so he called himself. In retaliation, those that remained of his followers started a killing spree. The most devastating was the plague, which nearly brought New Moscow and New Shanghai to their knees. And when I say this, I mean others beside them crumbled. Humans cannot be affected by some abilities, so they weren't human zombies, but there were zombie summons in the millions. With their summons turned into zombies, the summoners naturally fell sick. Over 90% of them died in the process. Godfrey was silent. Kane's death was because of the castle inside your soul's space, or else you might have been born into a society much worse than this. The moment Arthur said that, he saw Godfrey's expression harden. He sighed. The reason for the authorities' fear is simply this. They killed Kane by luck and tried 3 years of peace, but Kane's reign had already cracked the status quo between humanoid summoners and beast summoners. After he established feasting on beast summoners, the world couldn't just revert. The thrill of growing stronger at a faster pace was too enticing, and most of them already saw us as food. Arthur continued, "It's like smoking." He brought out a cigarette, lit it, and took a puff. "The dangers of it are right there, but billions still do it. The same goes for feasting. It's addictive. Once you're introduced, almost none resist the temptation to go wild. It doesn't make it easier for the rest of us. We're also being hunted," Godfrey said. "True, your mother is the prime target. Both the sanctuary and the authorities want her. Your life won't be peaceful. Good thing those knights are built for times like these. Knights only find their place on a battlefield in strife." Arthur tossed the cigarette into the lake, turned, and began to stroll back. "I'll allow you to think. You also have until tomorrow night to leave, or the authorities will come for you. I'd rather provide support from the shadows, as it would be more viable." "I understand. I'll repay this favor," Godfrey said solemnly. "I don't need you to repay me for anything. Just don't stray with my daughter, and I won't have a reason to hunt you down myself. Since I know much about you, I know this is the right time to kill you before you get your dragon knight." Hearing Arthur mention his next knight made Godfrey's shoulders slacken. Just how much has Isolde seen? I see now. She wasn't kidding when she said Nyx was obsessed with me. Lost in thought, he stared at the lake. When Kane fought against the castle, all the leading knights were there, and at their full strength, with an army many times this size. If Kane revived right now, the authorities would be the least of his problems, and the only way to at least prevent that was to keep his mother safe and grow. His family was still at the center of it all. With a sigh, Godfrey turned, only to spot a woman standing not too far from the mansion. When he approached, she smiled professionally. "Miss Isolde wants to meet with you." Godfrey looked left and right. "Where is she?" When I asked where Isolde was, this was not what I would have expected in 1,000 years, Godfrey thought as he stood in a huge rectangular hall, watching the charming figure swimming in the depths of the large pool. Isolde brought her head out the other end of the pool and turned to him as she brushed her hair back. After a year of not seeing her, Godfrey could only see that Isolde now wasn't just beautiful, there was a more mature air around her. Her eyes also held an intense fire built from purpose. She already had a future she was determined to follow. Both of them stared at each other in silence before Godfrey turned back, walked to the wall, and sat on the floor while leaning against it. He patted his hands partly covered by the fingerless gloves. "I get it now. You've seen a lot of the future, but you didn't see us get together. Will I become some kind of evil man and cause a catastrophe? I'm not too far from it if we're to take the authorities' propaganda into the equation. There was no we in the future I saw because I did not exist in your life. It didn't occur to me until after your departure. We likely ended up as enemies in that timeline, but it's changed," Isolde said as she left the pool, took a towel, and covered her fine, toned figure honed to perfect her feminine curves. "What are we going to end up as now?" Godfrey asked. "Allies," Isolde replied. "I'll work with the authorities, rise up their ranks, and ensure you have powerful aid from those I will rally along with the Pendragons." "It will be a full-blown war against the authorities," Godfrey said with a soft sigh. "Now we're talking about a war." He looked up, his ocean-blue eyes meeting her golden-orange ones as he rose to his feet. "It's been a whole year, Isolde. I wondered if I left enough of an impression to keep you thinking about me. While I fought beasts, I thought about it. In the pit, I thought about it. While jogging through the fog in the morning, I thought about it. What was Isolde thinking about? Who is she with?" As he spoke, Godfrey drew near. Isolde's eyes slowly widened as she found herself taking steps backward with each forward step Godfrey took. When her back finally hit the wall, Isolde looked at Godfrey. That solemn look on his face made him pitifully cute. His blue eyes were captivating. It had always captivated her. With the final step, Godfrey wrapped his arms around her shoulders and drew her close. Isolde didn't resist. She gently closed her eyes as he softly caressed her hair. His gentle touch seemed so natural. She bit her lower lip, her heart pounding hard as her face flushed pink. "He's grown taller," she whispered in her mind as her soft cheeks squished against his chest. After a period of silence, Isolde lifted her head and their eyes met. Sometimes I want to go to where you are. Imagine both of us as vagabonds. I imagine that place is free and we can do whatever we want. Godfrey smiled. It is. Humanoids, beasts, plants, and even an odd summoner like me have all found our place there. While he spoke, Isolde's undivided attention was on his lips. Godfrey, have you kissed anyone before? Isolde's sudden question made his heart strike hard. He didn't want to sound like a novice. Naturally, he wanted to act cool, but in reality, not one single cute girl had been interested in him to the extent of kissing. He swiftly composed himself as Isolde watched his face closely. Her face was quite close. He got a vivid view of her beautifully sculptured features, sharp yet soft curves that appealed to him. She had high cheekbones and soft-looking cheeks he would like to pinch. "Well, what about you?" Godfrey wanted to slap his forehead. He stuttered there, it was too obvious. Isolde smiled. "None yet. Who knows, you might be my first." "Might I aim to be your first and last?" Godfrey declared inwardly, but acted slightly surprised outwardly. "Well, are you going to kiss or not?" Both of them froze at that voice and tilted their head to Christine, who leaned against the door. From her attire, it looked like she was here for the pool. Her cold eyes, however, bore down on the young adults, and cold sweat almost ran down their backs. Godfrey felt her glare was more on him. When it comes to families like ours, there are traditions for situations like this. First, you audibly make your claim before the council of. "Mum, what are you talking about? It's not marriage," Isolde blurted out. "But you're only to give your virginity to the man you marry. If I didn't step into this place, who knows what." "Mum," Isolde yelled. Christine was so blunt, but she didn't seem to care in the slightest. "I know our traditions are old-fashioned compared to the current way of the modern world, but it's how it is." "I prefer it that way," Godfrey responded, only to hear Christine's next statement. "It actually goes both ways. Pendragons are too focused on their summons until 18. Emotions are allowed to be nurtured after that time. So Isolde might be in the safe zone, but I don't think a handsome young man like you has not been devoured by a lot of girls." Godfrey felt embarrassed, actually. A few minutes later, Godfrey lay in star shape on the grass with Isolde beside him. "Your mother is something else. She handles the political aspect of the family while my father deals with dungeons. She barely cares about what the person she speaks to feel about how blunt she is." Isolde replied, her face flushed red. She couldn't even look Godfrey in the eye after that encounter with her mother. "Let's stay out of her path." "Agreed," Godfrey nodded. "I almost forgot." Isolde turned her face toward him with a more solemn expression. "You're being hunted, not just by the authorities but by all the top schools. You should watch out for Snow, he's changed a lot." Godfrey looked at her. "How strong do you think he is?" "I don't know, he's more withdrawn now, barely uses his abilities, but I could sense his aura has grown much stronger, strong enough to make Grace feel uneasy and—" She turned to him. "The night before tonight, I saw you face him and Leander Ouroboros." "Leander, who's that?" "A member of the Ouroboros family. He'll surely loathe Percival after his sister's death." Isolde replied. She knew Odette was killed by the flood. "I'll face them then," Godfrey said with a firm tone. "I won't be leaving until noon tomorrow. Do you think Percival and I can meet Isaac and Lucy before we leave?" The next day, Godfrey and Percival descended from a car, facing a gym. They were dressed like Dragon City's dragon officials. Clad in black military attire with a gun in its holder at their thigh, full metal masks with the insignia of a dragon and a Roman numeral carved onto the helm. Their attire was to make them look more imposing. Isolde admitted that when the boys were given the clothes, that was the only way to step out without putting the entire city on lockdown and the Pendragons in trouble. "Wow, it's Isolde. Well, I heard she's close to the Spider Boy representing this gym against Coldstone Gym." A young man heading for the same gym replied to his friend. "She actually came with 2 dragon officers. Man, they're quite tall and imposing." "We're already late," Isolde said as they walked into the gym. The equipment had been moved and reorganized for people to watch the ring, which was usually just for sparring. Isaac stood on one end of the ring facing a hulking man with dreadlocks. The ring was a fortified floor, with ropes made from the silk of Isaac's summon around the square platform. Ancient martial arts were famous because they were one of the ways summoners could harness their enhanced capabilities to the fullest apart from using summon skills. A master of any ancient art had greater advantage when summons were locked in combat, and the summoner was left open. "What's going on here?" Godfrey asked as Isolde was led upstairs. Isolde chuckled. "I wanted it to be a surprise. Isaac is quite popular in this gym, and he's been learning boxing for a year now. He's proven to be quite the talent at it, and with his enhanced physique, he's the right combatant to represent the gym." 1 year wasn't much, but that was when it came to someone who didn't have mana. With mana, the muscles could pick up the techniques at a much faster rate. "He's still itching for a fight everywhere he goes," Percival chuckled. After being told the Pendragons would pull some strings to make sure his mother and sister were safe from attacks from the public and forceful questioning from the agents, Percival was able to have a good night's sleep. His mind was much lighter now. As they got to the next floor, Godfrey saw Lucy sitting on one of the 2 executive chairs. "Isolde," she waved one hand with excitement. Isolde sat down while Lucy looked at the 2 dragon officers standing at their sides. Isolde did not usually move with security. Was it because she faced a cousin? Lucy's eyes went to the Pendragon youth sitting on the opposite side, who had been watching Isolde from the moment she entered the gym. He was quite the martial arts enthusiast. "You're just in time. Any moment longer and the fight would have begun," Lucy said as the referee finally started the match. Isaac moved in immediately, same for Duncan, the heavily muscular man with dreadlocks. Both sides threw a straight punch, but Isaac's turned out to be a feint as he clenched his other fist hard, throwing a punch straight at Duncan's abdomen. The sound of the blow was like a hammer striking a bag of solidified cement. Duncan tilted inwardly, giving Isaac the opportunity to launch an uppercut. Duncan's head flung backward, almost sending him to the ground, but the man only took 2 steps, regaining himself on the 3rd. He spun that foot, launching a fast, powerful kick into Isaac's defense. Isaac was quick to enter defense mode with his forearms raised, but he did not expect that kick. It caused the air to ripple as his defense broke. Duncan spun, planting the foot he launched on the floor, hard enough to open little cracks, as he lashed out with the other foot, striking Isaac's chin. Isaac was swiftly sent to one of the corner posts. "I don't think that's a boxer," Lucy slowly said as Duncan followed up with a series of lightning-fast kicks while Isaac blocked. "That's Taekwondo. Duncan is like 2.1 meters tall. He takes full advantage of that with his legs, and that puts Isaac at a huge disadvantage," Percival said, attracting Lucy's eyes to him. "That voice. He can hit all he wants, Isaac won't fall." The moment the other dragon officer with the Roman numeral I spoke, Lucy's eyes widened. "It can't be. The more I look at them, the more they seem familiar and unfamiliar, but those voices." Lucy turned to Godfrey, who wore the dragon officer attire with the Roman numeral I at the top of the metal mask, with round black lenses where the eyes should be. "Godfrey." Just then, a loud sound rang from the arena, creating huge reactions from the crowd as Duncan leaped, kicking Isaac with both his feet right into the corner post. The blow was so heavy the corner post, made to handle high tiers with relative ease, tilted backward. Duncan was already sweating, but his eyes narrowed in dread as Isaac assumed his stance once more. "Why won't he fall?" Duncan roared internally. Everyone else was already wondering the same after seeing the beating Duncan had given him. They had predicted the end of this match, and that last blow should have been the one that ended it. So how was Isaac still on his feet? Geoffrey Pendragon frowned softly as Mr. Ben, the owner of Coldstone Gym, leaned toward his ear. "I believe that boy possesses the ability to be invulnerable to blunt attacks. It would explain why they chose him as their champion." "Can Duncan still win?" Geoffrey asked, looking at his younger cousin, Isolde, who had a smile on her face. "If he can deal a—" Mr. Ben couldn't finish, as Duncan roared and rushed toward Isaac, who held a smile and threw a kick. This time, Isaac dodged. Duncan's restlessness had given him an opening, and he exploited it. Propelling his body forward, he clenched his fist and threw a punch that tore the air. He could feel the air resistance ripping apart as his fist slammed right into Duncan's chest. The blow sent Duncan into the ropes, which stretched back a great deal before shooting the hulking man right back at Isaac, who welcomed him with a devastating punch to the chin. Spittle flew out of Duncan's mouth as his feet left the floor. He soared 2 feet backward and collapsed heavily. "Yes," Isaac bellowed, lifting both hands as he turned toward Isolde and Lucy's position, squinting a bit when he saw the dragon officers by their side. Lucy waved her hands back at him while Isolde rose and began to clap. Seeing this, Godfrey looked at Percival and saw him staring right back at him. Should we, Godfrey thought, and as if Percival could hear him, the blue-haired young man began to clap. Godfrey shrugged and joined. Man, Isaac got Dragon City's princess to clap, and not just that but 2 dragon officers. I heard those guys are literal pros at ancient martial arts. If they're clapping, that means Isaac is really good. People began whispering amongst themselves. Geoffrey leaned back, adjusted the sleeves of his suit, and clapped. Well done, he muttered softly. No one except those close to him could hear it. Since you're itching for a fight, Geoffrey smiled softly as the door swung open, revealing a dragon officer. His entrance attracted everyone's attention as he wore the dragon coat with bullion fringe epaulets, denoting his high rank as a captain. Just outside the door, under the bright sun, was a red dragon with many small and large horns, growling softly. I did not call you here to arrest a criminal, Captain. I called you here to give this young man pointers. He's on the path of boxing, same as you, and would need to learn more than depending on his physique, Geoffrey stated. Master Geoffrey, isn't this a bit too much? Isaac can't fight a dragon captain, the owner of the gym said plainly. It is, Coldstone has lost fair and square. This is about a talent that is beyond your gym now, not our tournament. What do you say, Isaac? A simple exchange wouldn't hurt. Isaac, Isolde yelled inwardly as she watched the captain half-heartedly remove his coat and enter the ring. Everyone was hyped. This was the first time they would watch a dragon captain fight. His aura, it's not a joke, Percival said, as the Roman numeral X etched into the captain's mask gleamed under the bright lights. That captain is a dual summoner. Last I remember, his first summon is a white-horned wyvern, and the second is a fire dragon. One is a peak lord tier, and the other is a king tier. Hearing what Isolde said, Godfrey crossed his arms. Isaac might not be in a lot of trouble if this was a summon against summon fight, but now it's come down to summoners. Those with more summons have the natural advantage. Shall we begin? Isaac said, and the dragon captain simply beckoned with his fingers, one arm behind his back. Isaac dashed forward, throwing a blow, which the dragon captain caught and clenched down on, cracking Isaac's bones. Ah! Isaac screamed, throwing another punch, which the captain blocked by releasing his broken hand and raising his forearm to block the strike. His speed was too fast for Isaac to follow. In the next moment, his hands left afterimages in the audience's eyes as he punched Isaac's chest 12 times in an instant. Isaac fell to his knees as blood trickled down from his mouth, despite his clenched teeth. As I thought, Mr. Ben said, his invulnerability has its limits. A damage greater than what he can take was likely to bring him down. It's how this world works after all. Higher tiers nullify weaker-tiered abilities, no matter how powerful they may seem. Now he knows his body isn't all that mighty, Geoffrey responded as everyone watched in shock. The dragon captain hadn't even regarded Isaac from the onset. It was shown by how the man simply turned and walked away. Wait! Everyone turned to Isolde's side, toward the dragon officer with no epaulets. Since we're giving out pointers now, I would like to learn from a captain. Godfrey, Isolde hissed, though in a very low tone. However, Lucy heard it, and her heart pounded hard. That was the Shadow King, her king. I'll be back, Godfrey said to Isolde as he held the railing, jumped over it, and landed with both feet. Dust rose as Isaac looked at him. Who's this? A mere soldier challenges me. A soldier that doesn't respect ranking, or was he sent by Isolde Pendragon? The dragon captain looked at Isolde. I really haven't been in full support of her ever since she went to that Manhattan school. That was time she was supposed to use to bond with those she would one day rule over, wasted in a school whose standards, no matter how high, cannot match what we already have here. It's best if you step out of the ring, he heard Godfrey say to Isaac. Upon noticing the change in Isaac's expression, the captain frowned behind his mask. Does he know the boy, so there's a good chance he's acting out of empathy, and with that, against a superior? The dragon captain grunted angrily. He clenched his fist. He acts like a rookie. Number 1, let's see what made you so audacious. Seeing the captain raise both fists, Mr. Ben sighed. That officer is dead. He might not even handle a lieutenant, much less a captain. Why would Miss Isolde allow him to walk into his grave? This doesn't look nice for her image. Geoffrey sighed. He looked at the dragon captain, waiting for him to look up so he could tell him to go easy on Godfrey, but the captain never did. Seeing this, Geoffrey rose to his feet. At that moment, the captain moved. Though he ran to the audience, he vanished and reappeared before Godfrey, throwing a powerful punch that blew the air apart. However, Godfrey caught the punch just by raising his hand. His strength rivaled a 15.2 throne tier, while this captain was a 10 king tier, strong, but heavily overwhelmed when facing Godfrey. "What?" the captain gasped. His eyes widened as Godfrey slowly clenched his other fist and drew his arm back. The feeling of death fell upon the captain. Was this really a rookie? It felt like he faced the Dragon General. His two knees struck the ground, shocking everyone. Godfrey paused and lowered his hand. "You shouldn't have broken his fist. Would you care to apologize?" The captain nodded fervently, like a hungry chicken, as he swiftly moved over to Isaac, who was outside the ring, and apologized. Isaac looked at the masked officer standing in the ring, reminiscing about a golden-haired teenager who stood before him with Derek's summon beaten unconscious and the other bullies fleeing. His mouth was wide open. He knew the name but couldn't say it. "Hans Haysita." Jeffrey covered his face with his palm. "I didn't expect this. That's not a dragon officer. It must be a friend of Isolde or a member of another family who's trying to impress her. This isn't the first. John has done it for years. A shame it didn't work." Jeffrey removed his coat, leaving only the vest and the white shirt as he slowly folded the sleeves. "This one, though, I can see the way she looks at him. That's quite a development, but it's not every day you see someone that young with such strength." Jeffrey leaped and stood on the narrow railing. "Hey," he bellowed, drawing Godfrey's attention. "How about you give me pointers? I've never seen anyone make a dragon captain drop his pride and cower, except the Pendragon heads and those other old folks." He turned to Isolde. "I won't kill him, don't worry." With that, Jeffrey leaped down. His landing cracked the reinforced platform. He cracked his neck and flexed his arms with exhilaration. "So," Jeffrey spread his arms wide, "let's begin." This fight just entered another level. Jeffrey isn't a professional, but he has paid many of the top boxers in this region, fought them, and won, a spectator said, feeling a rush through his body as the fight made him blaze. Ever since his father passed on his summon to him, turning Jeffrey into a dual summoner, his strength became monstrous. "I heard he once tore down a mountain with his fists in a period of 6 months, another said. "If he did that, this dragon officer might not survive a blow." "I began learning boxing 3 years ago," Jeffrey said. "Not too long, but I've defeated almost all the top-ranking boxers in this region. How about you?" "Me?" Godfrey raised an eyebrow beneath his mask. "I know you're not an officer," Isolde's cousin said softly. "Well, I've trained for 10 years. I also practiced a bit of taekwondo," Godfrey replied sincerely. "I've beaten people with 15 and even 20 years under their belt. Let's see how you fare." Isolde's cousin lunged at him, throwing a punch. It was as if his fist tore through a shockwave before it erupted. All his strength exploded forth in one devastating blow, yet Godfrey dodged. Jeffrey threw more blows, each opening massive holes in the reinforced platform. Fright made people scamper backward. Even the platform was no good. "Is that all you can do?" Jeffrey roared as Godfrey kept dodging. However, fear struck Isolde's and Lucy's hearts. They remembered his fight against Cecil. It couldn't be. Using great footwork, Godfrey moved out of the next punch and slammed his fist into Jeffrey's cheek. The blow shocked Jeffrey, but another came with greater force. The bite of the predator. The uppercut sent Jeffrey high, his teeth flying away like prisoners set free as his head nearly touched the ceiling before he plummeted. Godfrey caught his collar before his head hit the ground and then let him go. "You're good." Jeffrey couldn't even form a reply. His eyes were wide open, frozen in shock at what had just happened. He won. Lucy couldn't hold back the feeling inside her as Godfrey leaped up, held the railing, and flipped himself into the mezzanine. "Oh, so you recognize me now," he said lightly while Lucy's face flushed red. "Let's go," Isolde said. They all walked out with Isaac. The moment they entered the car and Godfrey removed his mask, along with Percival, Isaac trembled non-stop. "The entire world is after you and you came out of hiding," he bellowed. "Didn't you feel good when your king showed up for you?" Percival said softly, remembering how Godfrey fell with lightning from the sky. That rage, that overbearing dominance, sprouted a new kind of respect he never had for Godfrey before. "It did feel nice. Man, it felt like we were back in Manhattan, and all those stuck-up elites were just getting trashed by Godfrey. All hail the Shadow King." Grow up, Isaac," Lucy scowled. Isolde smiled in silence as this blissful scene played out before her eyes, but just then, a message popped onto her phone. It read, "Get him out of here. The authorities have arrived. They have trackers." It was from her mother. At the Pendragon mansion, Isolde saw a couple of soldiers littered about. Most of them were Lord and King Tiers, and amongst them was one she recognized with just a glance. He stood right before the door to the mansion, hands clasped behind him. Clad in his agent attire, John exuded a sharp air. He waited until Isolde approached with Isaac and Lucy. "Where are they?" John tilted his head. "Who?" Isaac raised an eyebrow. John smiled softly. "Harboring vagabonds who have slain a lot of lives and caused infrastructural havoc won't end well." "Are you threatening me without an evidence?" Isolde tilted her head. "We tracked their mana signature here," John retorted. "So what?" Isolde scowled and walked into the house where she saw a woman with fiery crimson hair in her blue coat, seated facing her mother. Her eyes met the woman's. She was none other than one of the authorities' best agents in this region, the Phoenix Summoner. Rumors were that she had an entire gate to herself because the heat of her phoenix made it impossible for anything to live. Even flying above cities might cause a catastrophe, which was why the government rarely sent summoners of her caliber on matters concerning Earth. The authorities sent someone like her. They're really desperate for Godfrey. They won't send such a force if it was just about Percival, Lucy said as they walked through the sitting room. "Where are you coming from, honey?" Christine asked as she picked up a cup of coffee from the table and took a sip. "Isaac had a match I went to watch," she replied and left the sitting room. "I could sense Isolde's aura. She'll grow up to be a pillar of humanity like her parents," Amber stated with a collected tone. Christine smiled. "She will. I will ignore the fact that we tracked vagabonds to this prestigious place. I will relay to the higher-ups that there was a mistake. I believe our target was trying to incriminate the Pendragons with his past with your daughter," Amber said as she rose to her feet. Christine merely smiled. "Be on your way then. Next time you plan to barge into our premises, make sure you inform us beforehand or you could lose your head. I say this for your sake because..." Christine sighed as a sudden pressure fell on everyone in the entire dungeon. Amber's eyes widened, her breath stifling. She could feel it. That was the gaze of Arthur Pendragon's summon. She could feel the eyes of all 14 dragon heads on her, like that behemoth of a beast was looming behind her. "My husband doesn't like his family being invaded, not even by the authorities," Superintendent Amber. Amber remained silent for a moment before walking out. "Did you find him?" John asked softly as he saw Amber storm out of the house with Agent Bram, who had been waiting outside the sitting room. Amber glared at him from the corner of her eye, silencing John. He had the guts to speak to her because she was a relative, but her expression was a clear sign they failed to get Godfrey. John wanted to punch a wall. He could remember every single time Godfrey absolutely humiliated him in a fight. It was so satisfying when Godfrey became unwanted by the society, but why couldn't he be caught? At night, 2 young men walked on the other end of Brooklyn Bridge, heading for Brooklyn. One of them wore a grey hoodie with a golden mask, while the other simply wore a hoodie to cover his head and a face mask. Though they reserved the dragon officer pants and solid boots, after Isolde had teleported them out of the dungeon, they swiftly made their way toward Brooklyn. Brooklyn forever changed after the apocalypse 100 years ago. It wasn't like New Manhattan, it was Freelancers' City. After 6 red gates opened simultaneously over the course of 100 in Brooklyn alone, people naturally fled from it. In addition, it was like a dungeon magnet, as there were lots of blue gates here, more than in 2 major cities combined. "Are we going to enter Brooklyn? There are a lot of bounty hunters ready to pounce on us, you especially if they discover your identity," Percival said as he looked at the city. "I was told to come here," Godfrey replied. "Told by who?" Percival asked. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed as a swirling portal appeared before them, the strong wind blowing against their faces. "By Gabriel, the man that watches over paradise. I heard his summon is actually an angel." Godfrey's statement made Percival wonder. "An angel, that's new." They heard a loud honk which came from a speeding jeep with a gang of freelancing summoners who lived their lives fighting in dungeons and selling beast parts. It was a much less respectable occupation than being a combatant for a guild or working for the authorities. "What's that?" the driver said, squinting at the 2 individuals before a bright portal. Before his eyes, they entered the portal and it vanished. While he simply sped past, Percival found himself in a vast field with a mix of vibrant purple, blue, and various shades of green. It came up to his waist and stretched far, with towering rock formations in the distance. "This is paradise," he said, touching the blade of a grass. "The city isn't too far ahead. Walking will make things slow too." Upon saying that, Godfrey manifested a towering horse, Belmont, Lament's stallion, and mounted it. He beckoned for Percival to come over, but the blue-haired ace refused by summoning Levi and shrinking him down to 100 feet long. It floated, moving its short limbs through the air as its long serpentine body covered with thick, jagged blue scales loomed above Godfrey. Percival leaped and landed on Levi's head, holding the mighty horn with one hand to steady himself. "Let's go!" Levi roared and soared into the sky, while Godfrey held onto Belmont's reins, as the warhorse galloped so fast that grasses 10 feet away on both sides were uprooted. It kept accelerating, forcing Godfrey to use echo and manifest armor over himself. Seeing this, Percival urged Levi to keep up, but the horse maintained its lead. Had it been in water, the reverse would have been the case, but one land, Belmont was king. On the south wall, several regular class were enjoying the fresh air when the sound of Belmont's hooves pounding the ground like a war drum struck them. It was quickly followed by Levi's great roar. Their hearts skipped a beat. As many of them began to unleash their summons, Godfrey rode out of the rock formations with Percival flying above him. "Is that?" A regular's eyes shone with orange light as he saw through the eyes of his eagle. The eagle perched on his shoulder, a small beast but a Lord-tier summon, one of the rare ones that had little sizes. "It's him, he's back," the regular bellowed, turning to the others. Godfrey, he almost gave the entire cohort a heart attack, and the captain had to go search for him, a female regular said in relief, as she watched the fierce race with slight trepidation. That speed was outrageous, and who was that on the flying summon competing with Godfrey? Belmont slowed down hundreds of feet away from the gate, and by the time he reached the gate, it didn't bring any fierce wind or cause shockwaves that might affect the foundation of the wall. Percival retrieved his Leviathan as the gate opened, and he saw a group of people walking out. Leading them was a dark-skinned woman with large, round golden glasses. Percival narrowed his eyes at her golden jewelry as he found it quite complementary to her skin tone. "You were just supposed to clear the orc dungeon and return. What took you so long? The captain had to go in search of you," Arden lashed out with her hands on her waist. "I wanted to strengthen my new knight," Godfrey replied softly while scratching the back of his head. Arden scoffed. "He's the one that fought the Ouroboros at the island, isn't he?" Her attention went to Percival, who felt a little prick as Arden's golden eyes glowed for a moment. A potential of 17.8. Just one more step, and his summon would have the potential to become a divine tier. Arden, I think I'm being tracked. For them to have located me in a dungeon with over 100,000 people tells me they've been waiting for me to come out all along." Godfrey said grimly. As heavy as this news sounded, he had to say it. After he left the Pendragon dungeon, he heard voices, then instructions from Gabriel which directed him to Brooklyn Bridge. Gabriel's telepathic reach was the farthest amongst everyone in Paradise. The abilities of his summon were many and mysterious. All Godfrey knew about this mysterious watchman was his name, a few abilities like the banishment skill that keeps Paradise protected, and that he sounded quite young for someone who seemed to be in Paradise from the very first moment a block was laid. "I know," Gabriel must have informed others. "Once they return, we're moving out of Paradise. It's good you brought extra power. It's an all-out battle, and I have a feeling those fanatics want to have a bite of you too," Arden said. "They're the ones that exposed me. I have a feeling a lot of people here were ratted out by those fanatics the moment you refused to serve their god," Percival stated. "So they're using us as the frontline soldiers against the authorities," Godfrey muttered, his ocean blue eyes gleaming. "I'm here again, and it still feels as surreal as the first time." Godfrey muttered within himself as he stood before Dirge's chamber door, looking at the hallway lit up with torches as it led right into the chamber. "Here we go again." As he walked down, he could see white phantoms shaped like women without feet, moving about as a melodious voice rang from within the chamber. The phantoms chorused like a choir as Dirge sang. There were no words, just different soul-touching sounds. Godfrey paused for a moment at the edge of the chamber to absorb it all. He watched Dirge stretch her hand to the phantoms as she sang. They would try to take her hand, but it would just fade past her gauntleted fingers. She would then turn to another. The song was sad yet hopeful. The view was tragic, yet strengthened him to keep standing even when it seemed all was lost. Dirge noticed him and swiftly bowed her head. "Grand Prince." Upon hearing that, the phantoms began to speak, though their voices were faint. "Grand Prince? Is he the Grand Prince? He's a child." They all faded away as the song that summoned them had already stopped. "I forgot to ask, what are they?" Godfrey asked, still standing at the entrance. "My sisters, we sang for the dead as they were laid to rest. Our sisterhood was of peace until a dungeon of Banshee opened up, possessing many of us, and then turned us against ourselves. I thought I was dead until the great alchemist brought me back to life with my newfound powers." Dirge lifted up her hands. "However, only my sisters, and I don't want to raise them as shadows." "Then there's no need for you to," Godfrey replied, turning to the wall where the image of an alchemist was carved. "Do you know who these alchemists are? They're saviors of my world, founders of the Golden Order, and men craving the mysteries of the mana tree. That's the reason Lament's helmet has the image of a tree." Dirge's reply made Godfrey recall that Lament's helmet did have what looked like a tree above the crest. "Your race was not too favored, so how were the alchemists able to create the false heart and fuse chimeric beasts with elite knights like you?" "Technology," Dirge replied. "Their knowledge was deep. They understood runes and how to manipulate mana to do their bidding through those runes." She lifted her staff. "My staff is able to absorb and store my powers. It can unleash my screams and also make them more powerful by merging multiple screams together. The more the screams, the bigger the damage. At my peak, I could shatter an entire mountain with just my staff." Godfrey was amazed. He also recalled that Mountain's Bastion had lots of abilities, two of which were Reflect and Ricochet, Tempest's double-bladed greatsword, whose ability was to either pull a person toward or away, and Ballista's bow that could conjure any type of arrow he desired. The alchemists, on their own, created weapons with abilities of their own and armor that enhanced their knights. The more he knew about these alchemists, the more Godfrey was amazed. Their creations even beat back Cain and his great army, sending him heavily injured back to his home world. Godfrey turned toward the other door, walked toward it and placed his palm on it. "What's behind this door? A beast?" He asked as the image on it was that of a dragon head with the sun in its mouth, and two short swords behind the head. Dirge was silent for a moment. "It's a man, a commander without troops, a walking, breathing sun, sometimes in the form of a man, sometimes in the form of a beast. He's the knight who purged the Banshee dungeon and fought against most creatures that threatened to engulf our planet." "Engulf? You mean creatures able to consume an entire planet?" "Yes," Dirge's response made Godfrey's face turn solemn. He couldn't imagine the horror on everyone's face if they saw such a dungeon beast approach Earth. It could be that people like Arthur Pendragon were already facing such threats, both those in the planet and those outside it. "I guess my next night will be much stronger than I expected," Godfrey muttered inwardly as he looked at the huge image carved into the petrified wall. "Godfrey!" A voice echoed through the chamber, and he left his soul's space, opening his eyes in the real world where he sat in a classic pickup truck, moving through an underground passageway. He was seated at the back of the truck with Percival, Dax, Oliver and Thalia, the wind whipping their hair about. "We're here," Thalia said, placing her finger at Godfrey's chin and tilting his head toward a blue gate which they had just entered. "Our mission is to kill the tracker. Once he's dead, they won't be able to follow Godfrey anymore," Arden's voice rang. Godfrey turned to him. Arden sat beside the driver, who was Aryan. Godfrey couldn't deny the warmth he felt inside as he looked at the other vehicles filled with members of the cohort. A good number of the cohort was here to fight for him. This dungeon opened recently. No freelancer has explored it completely, so the authorities won't have a map. With telepathy, we speak to ourselves, and that will be to our advantage, Arden said while looking ahead with a pensive expression. "Prepare yourselves." Arian's deep voice rang as the truck came out of the underground road and the bright sun fell on them. Their surroundings were like an abandoned metropolis with lots of greenery, abandoned vehicles that had aged so badly, it seemed like they had been left for 1,000 years. "We're in the territory of Ents," Arian stated. "The authorities will not be the only threat here." Saying that, Arian summoned Ishin before dozens of cars that blocked the road. Ishin lifted its leg and kicked forward. That kick sent almost 100 cars out of the road and into the buildings, causing 2 structures to collapse as the vehicles drove past. At the same time, a long convoy of armored trucks drove toward Brooklyn Bridge at high speed. Seated in one of the leading trucks was Amber, her arms crossed while Bram sat behind her with a man, a simple-looking man with large ears and black shades. "So he's in Brooklyn?" Amber asked. "He's been here for a few days, but his mana scent is growing weaker. He must have entered a gym. Once I let out my bloodhounds, I can find him. Once my hounds have a target, they'll track it down, even if it's dead," Henry, the tracker, said confidently. "Will the target know?" Bram asked. "Of course not. Even if they did, they're helpless." "I'm one of the Invincibles for a reason," Henry smiled. "My ability makes others hopeless. Isn't that the whole idea behind Invincibles?" After the Great Vanishing, Invincibles had increased from Lord Tiers to Throne and Saint Tiers, as they were to be seen as only weaker than the true giants. "You can be assured the target will lead us right into paradise. The shock my targets always have on their faces when I catch them is exhilarating. I can't wait to see it on the faces of those bloody vagabonds," Henry cackled. Amber shot him a glance from the corner of her eye. "Your summon might be one of a kind in the world, but the ability to smell can't bring down Godfrey Daniels. He's powerful enough to wipe out the troops who were supposed to apprehend Percival Jackson. That's why we brought 2 extra one-of-a-kind summoners." Henry furrowed his eyebrows. "So that's why you brought the other Invincible, even though he's a criminal." "His ability is crucial, but time traveling is a delicate ability, and we would like to reserve him as a last option. Let's hope it doesn't come to it, or he might have to kill Godfrey, changing a bit of our current present," Bram stated with his hands supporting his chin. "Won't killing the boy cause his mother to react? She might do what would make the higher-ups lose," Henry stated. "She won't," Amber retorted with a collected tone. "I think you've forgotten how his ability works. Once he kills Godfrey, it would be in the past, at his place of birth. His mother won't know how her son died, and fate itself will weave a life for her. She willingly accepts to sacrifice herself for the greater good of mankind. I really don't understand why this option wasn't chosen earlier." "Because there are variables. What you stated was the best-case scenario. She might adopt and have a reason to be attached to being alive," Bram stated. "Well, that reason can't be Godfrey Daniels, and whatever isn't Godfrey Daniels isn't a threat to the authorities when it comes to our target," Amber replied. "Wait," Henry interjected. "Why is this the last option? We should start with it." "I did mention affecting things like the past has variables we might not think of, which is why we would prefer to use Adonis White, the Manhattan High student known as Snow, for our main attack." Bram looked out the window. "The boy has grown from one of the many Glimmerwing butterfly summoners to one of the most talented summoners on the planet. He has kept pushing, doing the impossible several times. I don't know what's pushing him, but it's made him critical for this mission." While Bram spoke in one of the last few armored trucks, Manhattan students in combat-ready attires sat, some looking at the pistol handed over to them. Snow sat with his head lowered, fingers entwined and eyes closed, while Leander leaned against the truck's wall with his legs crossed. "Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down."